Hello there, and welcome to the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. This is season 16, episode 21. This episode is sponsored by noons.com, hodling.ch, siteshift.ai, Citrea, Layer 2 Labs, and Bitcoin.com News. And we are live with Filip Baturan, who is the CEO of an application layer for Bitcoin, which brings a lot of interesting features that very much resemble something I've seen from Revolut, I think. And his project is called Tanari. And it's pretty exciting. You launched recently. I read the news about you. I was asked if I'd be interested to interview you, and I said yeah, because this is exactly the kind of vision that I have for Bitcoin, to become useful and to basically replace the current financial system as opposed to being embedded into it. So yesterday I had an interview with someone who's doing like a Bitcoin debit card to allow people to spend. Today I have an interview with someone who's actually pushing the Bitcoin economy to happen. So thank you for being here, Filip.
Sure. Thank you very much for hosting.
So tell me more about Tanari. When did you come up with the idea, and why did you choose to build on Citrea?
I guess the origin of idea behind Tanari is kind of is stretches pretty long ago, because I've been interested in Bitcoin for a long time, few years now, and then like those principle Bitcoin, which is like self-custody, is something that I think is really important. But then like I didn't see Bitcoin actually replacing the what it promised to do, like replacing this financial system. I mean, the current financial system, it sucks, right? Like people know it. Banks are not what we want to have in this kind of power. But then like blockchain or Bitcoin as a technology has the potential to do it, but it's still not there. And like I was trying to explore what can be the solution to it, right? And then I was, working at some other projects, kind of on the ZK rollup space on Ethereum. But then I saw Citrea. So Citrea launched. They came out of the stealth last year, and I was like, okay, this is the solution that we need, because all of this technology that was building so far can be applied to Bitcoin as well, in some shape or form, right? And that's when I realized Tanari as an app can be something that will actually make this kind of deliver this promise of the Bitcoin.
You know, when I spoke with Orkun last year about Citrea, he was explaining to me that this sort of financial layer for Bitcoin is possible on Citrea, but I got the impression that it's gonna be Citrea that builds it. But what
Uh-huh.
I understood later, especially when you launched, is that basically Citrea is not the company building everything, but is more like the team that's in charge of developing this ZK rollup layer. And on top of it, there's going to be other teams that come with other stuff that's possible to build.
Yeah, I think that's a really smart approach, because like building just this infrastructure part is really hard. It takes time, and you have to be dedicated to it. You have to be focused. And then like once you do it, like what you can build after it is, kind of limitless. But then what Citrea, in my opinion, did really right is that they recognized those applications are also important from the beginning, which means like if they build a layer and then wait like 2 years and then applications start coming in, that's not the right approach for us actually to scale the Bitcoin in the right way. So, they have this Citrea Origin program that we are part of. And yeah, I think this is definitely the right approach to take.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you, where did you take the inspiration? Because my comparison, when I took a look at the Tanari website and I saw what you guys can offer, I realized this looks a lot like what I've seen from Revolut. But what was your inspiration for building the user experience?
Yeah, to be honest, like our inspiration was not specific to any existing product. It's mostly like how the financial system should work, because we want to like think it from the ground up. Like if you think about like what's the ideal financial system out there, it has a couple of features. Like it's fast, it's globally accessible, it's user friendly, but also like user has the control. Like he can do whatever he wants with the money, with the assets, but like the money can be saved, it can be used, you can earn interest on top of that. So we are trying to think this financial system from the ground up, and Bitcoin turns out to be, with Citral layer on top of it, the perfect kind of surrounding where we can actually build that.
Let's talk a bit about this part of ease of use because you've optimized for it.
Yeah.
People in Bitcoin are used to having seed phrases which they back up. They write 12 words on a piece of paper or a piece of metal, whatever they want, and then they store that and they make sure they never share it, and that's how they recover their funds. But I see that with Tanari, you optimized for Face ID or fingerprint, which is
Yes.
stored on the hardware level of your phone.
Yes.
So it's not stored by your application. But my question is, what is the recovery method? What happens if someone loses their phone or maybe loses access to their account or forgets their PIN, Apple
Yeah.
ID, or whatever? Do they lose their
That's a good
funds
question.
too?
Yeah, of course not. I mean, I would like just to point out that the first part of your question is really important because like this UX and ease of use is really important to us because like our idea is like Bitcoin should scale to everyone, right? Like it shouldn't be like, a couple of thousands of people know how to use Bitcoin and everyone else going with custodials. Like that's not the point of the Bitcoin. It should be globally accessible. And that's why we really focused on this kind of ease of use part so that we enable to anyone who knows how to use the phone actually uses financial system of the Bitcoin. And to answer your question more specifically, what enables this is, of course, Citrea is a roll-up first, but then like a few technologies that become useful in the recent times, such as passkeys. So the passkeys is something meaning on your phone, like Apple on Android, you have a special part of the hardware where you store your private key, and that can be accessible through biometrics. And then like if you lose your phone, your question is like, how do you actually recover it? Well, those passkeys can be synced. For example, if you have a Mac and an iPhone, that can be synced. But also what we are introducing is a couple of other recovery methods. And one of them is what we call social recovery, which means that you add a friend, a guardian, or a few of them, and then say like, hey, if I lose my phone, if I lose my access, those guys that I trust can actually recover it for me.
But my question about social recovery is, can't they recover by conspiring against you even if you did not lose your access and maybe while you sleep they steal your funds or something?
Yeah, I mean, we'll be really careful about how the mechanism actually works so that this thing does not happen. But one of the things, like you should pick the people who you trust first, and then we'll do whatever we can in order to like there's no any loophole so that they can do something behind your back if you did not approve it.
So in my previous metaphor, I sort of compared Tanari with the user experience you have in Revolut,
Mhm.
but I didn't specify. I've also said DeFi and all of these buzzwords, but I didn't really specify or ask you what can you actually do with Tanari. So what are the features that are included within this application?
Sure. I mean, we'll expand on features as we go. That's for sure. But like, we envision an app where you can actually first, of course, store your Bitcoin. So anyone can send you Bitcoin. It's there. You can keep it in a kind of a secure way. And then on top of that, add some layers, which means like maybe multi-sigs in the app, which means like you can have multiple accounts. One account can be a spending account. You have like $20 there. But then like maybe you have a multi-sig with your wife or your parents or anything else that enables you to store like larger portion of your BTC there. And then like you can easily switch between those. So kind of storing of Bitcoin is one part. The second part is like spending of Bitcoin, of course. And we are really pushing for this also to be as simple as possible. It means like you have the QR code, you scan it with your camera, and that's it. Like you transferred your BTC somewhere else. And then like what we will also enable is transferring between not just on Citrea, but also like from Citrea to Bitcoin and from Citrea to Lightning Network as well. So you have this whole Bitcoin ecosystem integration. And then additional features that we have is like, first of all, some of them to make you like ease of use even better, which means you have your like contacts, and you can add a contact because like we are not remembering all those addresses, zeros, numbers, letters. So kind of that makes the experience much more smoother for an average user, for a non-technical person. But then we want to offer, different kind of financial primitives in it. Meaning like you can lend and borrow your Bitcoin, or you have Bitcoin-backed stable coins if you need kind of a stable currency, or then you can earn some kind of interest on top of that. And when I say interest, I don't mean like yield in terms of like DeFi stuff, casino stuff. I mean like some kind of transparent interest that like your Bitcoin is actually put to use with all the things being transparent, so you know what you're getting in. And like multiple other financial stuff. Like our goal is to replace the whole financial systems, and that's what we're striving to do.
I think Bitcoiners have this culture of being obsessed with open source for the reason that they want to verify that the application that they're using, their wallet or their key signer or whatever they have does what it actually says it does. And on your website, you mentioned that you're committed to proving this, but you haven't open sourced the code yet. So, can you tell me
Yeah.
exactly what parts are open source and which are not?
I mean, the code is not live yet, so we have not launched the first version yet. But once we launch, we'll try to do whatever we can to make all the parts open sourced eventually. In the meantime, like, there is also, a business to have. So it means that, we cannot just outsource everything right away, but we'll think through like what exactly we can source at the beginning, open source at the beginning. And then as we go, we'll try to push this as much as possible because I agree with you. Like Bitcoiners want to, don't trust and verify, and we'll try to be on that point as much as we can.
What about fees? Are you gonna be charging users fees for your service? Because I guess
Yeah,
the grant that you got for building this is only gonna last for maybe a couple of years, and then you're gonna need to make your business sustainable.
yeah. I mean, our point is, of course, to make sustainable business because, like, we have not sponsors behind us to like, put millions in us just like that, but also for it to be transparent. We're figuring out the exact fee model. It will have fees on Citrea, that's for sure, that you pay to the network itself. But then on top of that, like how we'll charge, that's like still up to debate, and we'll decide like before the launch for sure.
Okay. So I see on your website that you have a section that says you'll be able to send and receive BTC from other Tanari users via Citrea. And this is interesting because I've seen that your user interface will have usernames.
Yeah.
So you don't need to scan addresses, you just need to know the name or the account name of the person to which you're going to send.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things we are really excited about because like it makes all of this so much simpler. Like imagine that you have a username Vlad, right? And someone who knows you knows that's your username there. They can just like type in send to and then type Vlad, right? They don't have to know all those numbers and letters. But what they can do on top of that is like they will be able to create a contact of you, which means if they have a nickname for you, that's even better because like they're now remembering not only an address, not only a nickname, but also like not only your username, but also kind of a nickname thing. And we think that's needed for people to actually use this in a normal way they would use, their app on a phone.
I'm actually curious on the Bitcoin base layer if you have an address. Everyone can see how many coins you have, which transactions you did. And if they have your username on Tanari, will they be able to also see how much money is in your account and with whom you've transacted?
Yeah, I mean, like that depends on your case. They will be able to kind of see something like that. It's not like it's untraceable, but like that's also on a user to actually picks the username. Like you can pick a random username, so no one you're kind of stay, semi kind of anonymous, right? But then like if you want for people to actually for them to be easier to send you, then you can pick something that people will figure out. I guess we should look at usernames the same as when now we look at the address, just like a step easier, right? If people know your address, they can follow you, right? They can know how much money you have. And that's before we add some kind of a privacy on top of it. Because with Citrea as a layer, we can actually work on something like, shielded CSVs on top of that. So we
Yeah,
can
ZK
actually,
snarks or whatever.
yeah. And then like we can enable more privacy to Bitcoin, which we think is really needed, but like it will take some time. But it's possible now, and it wasn't before. So that's, in our opinion, really great.
Okay, because one trade off I think sometimes is that you give people your name and then they're able to see who sent you transactions and how many coins you have. If you ask me if your neighbor knows your name and knows how much money you have, it's not really healthy. It
Yeah,
today with banks at least you have money in your bank account. Nobody asks you how much money do you have in your bank account. But with this they can actually just type a name and they're able to see it. So I'd be happy if you integrated the ZK snarks.
yeah, definitely. I agree with that. And by the way, you can pick your name like N on 123, right? And then like you're good to go. It's just easier to send you money for people who know you.
It also says on your website that you can send from Tanari to any on-chain Bitcoin address, and you can receive from any on-chain Bitcoin address. How is this going to work? You're also
Yeah,
going to have the equivalent of an on-chain address, and there's gonna be a peg in, I guess, or peg out into and out of the ZK rollup.
yeah. part of it is the kind of heavy lifting that Citrea is doing, because they have the Clementine bridge. But what will be happening behind the scenes of our application is something called atomic swaps. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but like it enables us, to actually, let's say Bitcoin and Citrea, Bitcoin mainnet and Citrea. So we can actually, swap the assets between those two chains back and forth without also relying on a, third party custody.
Yeah. And you also have Lightning wallets and invoices. So basically, you can pay Lightning invoices out of Tanari.
Yes, that's the goal. So the goal is to fully integrate the whole Bitcoin ecosystem, because like Lightning is really useful, right? It's out there, people are using it. Also, like some people just want Bitcoin mainnet and that's it. We want to make all of this possible in a way that's also like, transparent and people know what's happening. So the whole idea is to make it as easy as possible and also as broad as possible in terms of use cases.
Does this mean that Tanari will become an LSP, which is a Lightning service provider, or do you plan to outsource this task to some other LSP that already exists and has liquidity?
Yeah, we probably won't have to do that, like depending on the atomic swap integration. But like atomic swaps kind of handle this part of it. So it in current setup, I think it will not be needed for us to become LSP.
When you say that you can generate stablecoins and get loans against them, what kind of stablecoin will it be and what kind of network effect will it have? Because if you have a new class of stablecoins that maybe does not have the same network effect, it's gonna be difficult to swap for USDT or USDC or something that is already accepted across a lot of merchants. So how will this work?
Yeah, that's a good point. We're not against centralized stablecoins. We think they're useful. We think they serve their purpose. What we would like to emphasize is that they are centralized, right? So if you have USDT, you're trusting Tether. With the beauty of Citrea as a layer is that people can build their own Bitcoin-backed stablecoins. And we actually know a company and we're talking to them. They're also part of this Citrea Origin program. And they're actually creating this like Bitcoin-backed stablecoins. And you're definitely right that they won't have the networking effect right away. But like I think having an option to have decentralized stablecoins based on Bitcoin is a great thing to have. And then over time, we can see that like if the usage will grow and how will those networking effects actually, take place and spread around.
On your website, it says that you also are planning to have a solution for businesses to accept Tanari Bitcoin. So my question to you is, why would businesses accept Tanari as opposed to going to some Lightning Network service provider? What is the competitive advantage? How would you pitch this?
Yeah, the competitive advantage is being on Citrea layer, but like I wouldn't pitch it like that. I would pitch it like being more faster, being cheaper, having a privacy to it that we just discussed. So like with Citrea layer, you can do multiple things that you cannot do on Lightning, and we can even make a kind of custom solution for businesses accepting this, in order for them to kind of generate reports from their Tanari account and like do the things that like they do now in the traditional banking system or in traditional applications on top of it. So our idea is like if this financial system will actually be, if it will grow and it will be adopted, it's really important for people to spend their money, right, their Bitcoin or stable coins. And then like we want to enable those offering the services to also easily integrate with Tanari and then have this kind of cross collaboration between those two parties.
When you say on your website that you're going to be able to provide financial services by your own rules, it means basically that you can post offers for others to maybe offer loans or borrow your coins. And maybe there's gonna be like a marketplace where people see your offer and they can accept it or they can decline it. Or is it gonna be like this, user generated, where everyone says, I want to do this, do you accept? Or do you envision a more centralized way where you are the party that is in the middle of intermediating these trades?
We're not seeing ourselves as a third party, like being in the middle. What we meant, like by your own terms, is that like some people are kind of okay with custody of like within their family, let's say, So imagine like I'm not a technical person and I have, 3 people in my family who are technical and know this Bitcoin thing. And then like if they from Tanari can create account, a setup or something like they are trusting only those 3 people, then we think that's good because they choose to do that. On the other hand, if you have a person who is like, I'm a fully self-custodial type of a person and I don't want anyone except me to touch my funds, that's also a legit way. So we will try to offer as much as those possibilities that we can so people can actually choose how they want to approach their money and their assets.
So are you saying that it's possible for Tanari to be a custodian? Or do you hold any coins at all if the users opt into it?
No. The idea is for us not to call anything. The idea is for enable users to enable other users hold the coins for them in the example that I just explained. So yeah.
So are you saying that it's possible for Bitcoin banks to be built on Tanari?
Yeah, I mean, we see Tanari as a Bitcoin kind of bank, but like we don't want to use word banks because like it has a wrong connotation, right? Like people when they say banks, they think about like control and custody, and Tanari is kind of the opposite of that. But yeah, like having those services that bank offers and maybe even more is something that we are, thinking about and we will offer.
For this concept of banks, even though it's different, I still have to ask because this light bulb is gonna light up in people's minds. And they're gonna say, well, it sounds a lot like Fedimint or a lot like eCash, which is sort of another layer on top of Lightning where you have mints and people create their own banks and they trade and they can get rugged. So I want to ask you, what's the difference?
Yeah, the main difference is what we can do along it. So for example, we can have those type of setups, but like compared to Lightning, what we can do on Citrea is use these account abstraction methods, which means like your Face ID is actually signing the transaction, or like do any kind of custom level of security that you want, like those guardians that I just explained, or like add any alerts, any features, like whatever you can imagine, we can add it directly on Citrea. And that means like since it raises ZK rollup, it's fully backed by security of the Bitcoin, right? So that's kind of the main difference. The expressiveness of what we can do with Tanari is much larger than what we can do on those other scaling solutions.
If there's a bank that's built on Tanari, let's say, and they're not fulfilling their promises to customers, is there any way Tanari can intervene and do something to their funds?
Well, currently we don't see banks being built on Tanari. What we currently see is Tanari being this kind of a bank, right? But this kind of self-custodial bank, which means that like we're not envisioning people building their own stuff. We're envisioning people using the feature that we offer for them to create their own setups. That's how we see it.
Yeah, but you told me that users can choose other users to custody their funds. And
Oh yeah,
if this grows, if this use case is gonna grow, it can lead to actual users becoming banks for others, like
I see.
hundreds
I
or
see.
thousands of other users. And if these users, let's say, become dishonest and there are lots of reports that they do something with the funds that they're custodying, which is not nice,
Mm.
is there any way for Tenari to intervene?
In the current setup, no. So in the current setup, like how we think about it is that like we either give control to users or not. So if they have the control and they can set up those things, they're kind of responsible for it. What is really important to us is for this to be fully transparent. So when people join these kind of setups or when people use these kind of setups, they're always aware like who they're trusting and what are the trade-offs that they're like engaging with in order to use the services.
Do accounts on Tenari have any sort of reputation system? Or can you link social media to your account so people can see what else you've been posting or what you're doing in daily life or have a description or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, we're only at the beginning, but like if you also think about financial systems in general, like for example, what's happening on the WeChat is that it's not just a financial system, it's like everything inside one thing. And like Elon Musk is saying it's something similar to X, right? They want to make it everything app. So that definitely can work, but we are not that far away. We want to focus firstly on enabling these kind of financial use cases because there's a lot of them to enable, and then we'll see like what the next steps are.
Yeah, it's really interesting because once you open up these use cases, there are all sorts of interesting ways in which you can make use of them.
Mhm.
and this only opens up possibility for other stuff to get built.
Yeah, because like, we couldn't build something like this before. Like we didn't have ZK rollups on Bitcoin before. And now that we have, I think we have a unique opportunity because like we can now do this without trade-offs. Like earlier, people could do this on some sidechain, right? On Bitcoin sidechain, but like it would have a trade-off. Like the sidechain is nowhere near secure as a Bitcoin or as a ZK rollup on Bitcoin. So since we have the first time that we have this opportunity, I'm really excited to see like where we can go eventually, but we're taking the first steps here and seeing how it will play out.
You mentioned sidechains on Bitcoin, and I'm actually curious what you think about BIP300 drive chains.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different proposals and scaling solutions. I'm someone who's been familiar with ZK rollups and kind of how they work and what's kind of what they offer. So anything other than that kind of seems, once we have it in the kind of it's in final form, I think other things are not that necessary. Now that doesn't mean that other things won't be used. I think there is a group of use cases for those things as well. But like our focus is on Citrea, which is the ZK rollup, and we want to go along with that.
Okay. FYI, I'm gonna plug two sponsors and then I'm gonna ask you more questions. Of course, there's Layer 2 Labs, which is building BIP300 and these drive chains. And they are trying to bring every use case to Bitcoin as a Bitcoin sidechain. And they actually have software that you can download at layer2labs.com/download. And it works on the Bitcoin Signet. So it's not just an idea anymore. It's actual software that you can try today. I think it can also be implemented with Upcat or some other Covenant soft fork, but with fewer security guarantees for the users, because BIP300 provides some protections which are sort of taken away if you do it in, with just covenants. But anyway, I think it's interesting and I look forward to seeing it on LiveNet. Of course, there's also Citrea that's sponsoring the show, and that's another vision for the future of Bitcoin. They are building this ZK rollup on which you're also building. You can try the Citrea software at citrea.xyz, and I think it runs on the testnet. They have a wallet, they have some developer tools that you can use, and they go to conferences where they do workshops and they show others how this technology works. I actually attended one of their workshops last year. I was really impressed that basically they're making Ethereum tools, which are open source and already available, work in Bitcoin and with Bitcoin, BTC. And I was going to ask you, because I missed out this part, what is the website where people can find more information about Tanari? And also, where are you going to post the source code? Because I guess that's also important.
Yeah, so the website is tanari.io. So we'll post everything there. You can also follow it on Twitter. And for the source code, yeah, it will probably be GitHub eventually, but we are still, talking about that, as I said, like talking about which part we will open source first and, how we will evolve over time.
Now, let's talk about your background, because you said you worked in ZK rollups before, but on Ethereum. Did you build something similar with a previous project?
Yeah, so my background is in engineering. I did AI at first, from 2018 and onwards. And then around 2020, 21, I became interested in the blockchain. So we kind of started doing things with a layer on Ethereum, ZK rollup on Ethereum called ZK Sync. Couple of friends of mine and me. And what we did with ZK Sync is that our company did multiple things. We had like this tooling for them, like, developer stuff. We did integrations, but like what my team did, we were building tools on them because they had this cool thing, which was native account abstraction. And this kind of native account abstraction is actually what enabled us to do some really cool things. For example, on the ZK Sync, what you have is something called Paymaster, which means that someone else can sponsor a gas fee for you in transactions. So if I'm sending, some cryptocurrency to you, a third party can actually sponsor our transactions. And how you can do this is you actually need to code this. Like this is a smart contract. You need to code this. And what we did is kind of by using this account abstraction methods and like this kind of ease of usage things, we enable people to create this with a couple of clicks, not the code. So we have this background of like building simple interfaces for people to use kind of complex technology that's hidden from them. And we now want to apply this to Bitcoin, because with Citrea's environment, we can actually now do this, which is a great thing.
So what was the moment when you decided you want to stop building on Ethereum and switch to Bitcoin? What was it that made you change camps, basically?
Yeah, I mean, like a couple of things, because like I was always looking at the Bitcoin, on the sides, what's happening there. The first thing was definitely like, ordinals craze, rooms and BRC20 and all of that stuff. 23, I think it was. And then like once Citrea launched, we looked at what they announced, and my team was like, okay, this is something we would build ourselves if we were to build, a roll up on Bitcoin. They seemed like they have a, strong kind of background to do this, but also a strong vision. And yeah, we met with Citrea team. We talked. We saw that they actually have a really good team, and they have, they are aligned with what we actually want to see on Bitcoin. Because like if you talk to different groups of like Bitcoiners, some are like really stubborn and like not accepting anything except mainnet, and some are like, oh, we should build any solution anywhere. It just has some relation to Bitcoin, which is also not ideal. But now like with Zk rollups and Citrea's kind of vision how it can evolve, we were fully aligned, and that's why we decided to like let's go and let's build something together.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm very enthusiastic about these projects because they basically take lessons from Ethereum or whatever and bring it to
Yes.
Bitcoin in a way that's much more scalable and efficient. And
Yes.
I'm always happy to see young people come to Bitcoin and build stuff without anyone's permission. I think this is exactly why this technology exists. Because I
Yeah.
think the old guard of developers, they're sort of bitter about this whole space, and they're like, yeah, nothing scales, nothing is good enough.
Mm.
Whatever they look at, they're gonna find the problems and they say it's just not good enough. But if you can actually get people to build on Bitcoin and let the free market decide if it's good enough, or let the tech prove itself before you even dismiss it. These days I'm reading the emails that Satoshi was sending, and I've been spending a lot of time on the MedsDAO, yeah, the cryptography mailing list where Satoshi announced Bitcoin. And I've been reading the responses from people like James A. Donald, and who's the other one? Ray Dillinger.
Okay.
And they've been so dismissive, and they were trying to explain very hard, like, oh, there's no way this is gonna work. It's a horrible idea. They took it apart and they said where it's gonna fail. And then Helfini showed up and said, this is a pretty good idea. It has a lot of potential.
Yeah.
And I think we need more people to be enthusiastic about tech and build it to prove its limits, as opposed to only dismiss it and nothing is ever good enough. And
Yeah.
it doesn't even get the chance to be tested by the free market to see if the users want to use it. I think it's also curious that you are launching in this environment where I think people in Bitcoin already have their preferences for what they like to use, the layers that they like to use. I think it's beautiful that you're integrating with the Lightning Network because there are already users there.
Yes.
But on the other hand, maybe it seems a bit too exotic or too foreign for them, that they're gonna have something which is so much like a banking app and it's inspired by something that exists on Ethereum. I guess that's why you told me to not use DeFi in the description and that you're trying to change the name of that.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, like we're trying to change the whole narrative around like what Bitcoin is, because I completely agree with you that we need some kind of enthusiasm and people actually trying out the ideas. All of this, nothing of this is like guaranteed, right? But like we need for people to take kind of leap of faith, because like those Bitcoiners at the early stages, they did their leap of faith, they took it, right? So I think we need to do the same thing now. We have different base now, but like we can build on top of that. And I fully agree with you that we need more people. I mean, if you look at it, like Vitalik and guys that launched Ethereum, they were trying to build some stuff on Bitcoin, right? They just couldn't do it. And then like USDC, I think Circle actually or Tether I'm not sure which one, but like they tried to
USDT
do.
still exists on the Omni layer on Bitcoin. They have like
Yeah,
$11
yeah.
million.
Yes, so Omni layer was kind of a first experiment of this, right? But the technology wasn't there. So kind of if you
No,
ask
it was
Bitcoiners,
there, but it didn't scale. That was the issue.
that's the point. Like you couldn't do what doing now once we have all those experiments behind us. So I think like if you ask Bitcoiners back then, like like how should we scale the best, they gave their best answers. Those soft forks, the Lightning Network, right? That was the kind of best possible thing they could do back then. But now we can do much more. And related to your point that like some Bitcoiners will still dismiss it, I'm okay with it. What we're trying to change the narrative is like take those people who are open-minded and show them like what this actually is. And that's why transparency is really important to us. And like once people see that now there is an alternative, well, they will figure it out. Maybe at the beginning, some tech people, but that's why we're pushing for this non-DeFi stuff. So it's actually more applicable to everyone, to all the people around the world.
Yeah, but at the same time, I hope that you're aware that you're fighting against the more powerful narrative that's coming out of the US, where they say never sell your Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It was said by Michael Saylor, it was said by Donald Trump. A lot of people just want to perceive Bitcoin as digital gold, but in the sense that it's expensive to transact and you should hold it in safes, it's not money. And you're trying to prove that, okay, Bitcoin can be used as money, and we have this beautiful suite of applications that we're developing.
Yeah, I think the important phrase there is like it could be used. If someone wanted just to hold it, that's okay. For example, when you say don't sell your Bitcoin, where maybe that's a good thing because like if you have, let's say, tons of Bitcoin and you want to kind of have some small interest on top of that, you can loan it. I think it goes with that narrative. So there's a different spectrum of how will people think about it, and we want to enable all of them to actually do what they want with their Bitcoin.
Let's talk about how Tanari scales. Like how many transactions per second do you think you can process with Citrea? And also, what is the settlement time for a transaction? When does it become final?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any specific numbers because Citrea is not live yet, so it will depend on their mainnet. What I think is important is that for people to have some kind of approximation, which is that in terms of fees, Citrea will be like 15 to 20 times cheaper than the Bitcoin mainnet. And the transaction can happen pretty instantly, like a few seconds. So that means like people will have fast transactions and relatively cheap transactions, of course, depending on the usage and all of that. But like that's an alternative that people can now look at.
Is it possible to run something that's like a Citrea node so that you can verify transactions yourself?
Yeah, as I'm aware, yes. So Citrea, will offer this on their own. But yeah, you will be able to basically. I think like what's important is that every Citrea transaction as a zk rollup is actually verified on Bitcoin itself. Which means that like Bitcoin network actually provides the whole security of every Citrea transaction. So yeah.
It says on your website that you are here for the Bitcoin economy, not the altcoin casino, but I don't think there's anything that prevents users from generating tokens and transferring them on your protocol. If you can generate stablecoins, you can also do meme coins.
Yeah, that's true for Citrea in general. But from the Tanari's perspective, we can actually, kind of decide to what we will integrate to it, right? So if there is something we are not comfortable with, we'll probably not integrate in Tanari. I mean, that means that maybe someone else was building on Citrea, and that's fine by us. But like we want to have this stance, which is pretty kind of conservative in terms of like our integrations and trustworthy and also transparent.
Are there any trade-offs involved when you're using Tanari?
Yeah, I would say no. The only trade-off you have is like Citrea trade-offs that you have. So people should be kind of aware what it is. I mean, Citrea will also evolve as a network over time, but like we want to not give people any kind of a fear that someday something will happen to them in terms of like Tanari account or anything else. So if you trust zk rollup on Bitcoin and Tanari is this thing that we kind of want it to be in terms of like openness and transparency, then there is no additional trade-off there.
You have a definition of self-owned on your website about Tanari, but what does it really mean? Because the security of the system is obviously whatever is built on Bitcoin is not 100% as secure as the Bitcoin main chain. You're
Yeah,
accessing the layer 2 for the purpose of getting extra features that you don't find on layer 1.
yeah, that's true. What we mean by self-owned, well, why we said first self-owned is because we didn't want to push this self-custodial because we think it's kind of not that understandable. So our goal for Tanari is to be available to anyone. So people who are not from the blockchain, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency world, we think that self-owned is something they will identify much easier. They'll understand much easier. So that's why we are pushing for self-owned. And then like for the trade-offs, I think you're definitely right. Like all of those scaling solutions have some of the trade-offs. We'll try along with Citrea, of course, together to explain what the trade-offs are over time. And as I said, like those systems can evolve over time. So once people know that, then they can see if the usage is fit for them to actually use it.
Okay. So when do you think that Tanari is gonna be ready for people to try?
Yeah. So we have this kind of mailing list. So you can actually subscribe to that. And we are, in the, let's say, next couple of weeks, we are offering this early access. So people can try it out on their phones. Our goal for the global kind of release is to go along around Citrea mainnet. So, not soon after that, that we publish Tanari with them, so you can actually test out Tanari on Citrea mainnet directly.
So I guess Citrea requires some sort of covenant software to operate at scale.
I wouldn't say operate at scale. I would say, with covenants, they would have much less trust assumptions. But like Citrea is working nowadays just fine on testnet, and the idea is to bring that to the mainnet. And then, of course, if you have soft fork and a covenant, that will only improve it. But like it will work as today normally.
I do remember there was a paper last year, Collider Script or something, that proved you
Mhm.
can activate Opcat without any soft fork, but it's very expensive.
Yeah, I didn't deep dive into that paper, but I know there's a lot of like those papers that kind of seem promising, and I would really like for people to explore this further and to see what we can actually do because like, that's why we're here, like people exploring with Bitcoin and offering different things, and like if we figure out that one thing is better than the other, I guess all those like people who are really in line with Bitcoin philosophy, they will actually adapt to it. So I think that's great that people are exploring multiple things.
Do you think there will be other Citrea applications with which Tanari can become interoperable?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we already, as I said, like have kind of talks like that because like in this Citrea Origins program, we have multiple people who we see fit for our integrations. And that's why we are, talking with them to figure out what's the best way to actually integrate because they will build their own products on Citrea and we can actually collaborate from the beginning. And yeah, I think that's pretty cool.
Something interesting that I see on Noster that gives people an incentive to post quality stuff is that they zap each other with the Lightning Network.
Mhm.
And the unfortunate part is that most of it is custodial. I was
Mhm.
wondering if you can integrate with Noster using Tanari and have this non custodial solution, but also be able to bridge to the Lightning Network if the user wants.
Yeah, I mean, like those all are protocols, right? The point for them is to be permissionless protocols. So I would say for sure, why not in some form, right? I also think that's a cool feature. But I also think that all of those features can be done non-custodially because like Lightning is great for payments, but like if you look at the usage, around 90% of Lightning is custodial. And like if you ask me, like that's not the point of the Bitcoin. It's okay for not everyone to use self-custody, but like what happens when we bring the level of complexity of self-custody down to the level of the custodial solutions? Like people nowadays use, Binance, Coinbase, and all of those because like they're easier. People are not saying like, hey, I really want for someone to hold my money and like, I completely trust it. So I think like once we have this difficulty level down, people will actually start to use those non-custodial solutions even more.
I don't think it has much to do with difficulty. It's just that For example, when I used Kraken and I withdrew some funds from Kraken to my
Okay.
wallet, I got like 2 warning messages that said, wait, if you're going to withdraw to this address, you're going to lose your FDIC insurance and blah, 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 and your funds will not be covered by this. Wait, the fees can be very expensive. You may actually have much less Bitcoin after you make this transfer. So if a normal user is going to read that, they're going to get scared and say, wait a second, I don't want to lose this. I think my Bitcoin is fine. It was here yesterday, it's here today. I don't think Kraken ever got hacked, so I'm gonna leave it here. But that defeats the purpose, and it's unfortunate that we got to this point where exchanges are using some sort of tactics. I think Binance at one point had very high fees for withdrawing your Bitcoin. That made a lot of people think twice. And they were thinking, oh, Bitcoin is so expensive. Maybe that these exchanges also contributed to the building of this store value narrative where you're not supposed to send Bitcoin because users don't check to see the mempool and verify the fees because it doesn't matter to them. If they want to withdraw from Binance, they're going to pay $10 or something, whatever Binance is charging. And it's not going to be processed immediately, broadcast on the Bitcoin network because exchanges tend to batch transactions. When they send out, they're going to have this huge send with maybe 200 outputs to save on fees. So it's unfortunate, but I do hope that Tanari is going to contribute to making self-custody more friendly and more of the norm among users.
Yes, that's right. Like enable people to have their own freedom to decide what they want, enable it for it to be easy, and also like for people to know what they're using and what's behind it, and that they can actually do and decide for themselves. And I think that's really important.
I think so is it gonna be possible very easily to transfer from Tanari to the main chain? Or do you think that swapping services will make it more convenient than this and faster?
When you say swapping services, do you have any particular kind of in mind type of swapping service?
Yeah, something like Sideshift, which is also a sponsor of the show, and they have swaps between, for example, Rootstock BTC. Rootstock is this Ethereum EVM sidechain for Bitcoin, and you can swap to the main chain or vice versa. And I was wondering if your basically peg out mechanism out of Citrea is gonna be fast enough for people to do it directly with Citrea, or third parties like Sideshift are gonna have an opportunity to do more instant swaps.
I think how we see it is that we'll actually, at least at the beginning, integrate with those kind of atomic swap providers, which means that like if there is an atomic swap provider enabling Citrea to Bitcoin and vice versa transfers, we are happy to talk with them and integrate with them so that we can enable the best possible experience to the user. There is another atomic swap provider that offers lower fees for faster transactions. We can actually integrate with that. So like kind of people can have a choice of like what they will do. It's not that we as Tanari will do this ourselves, at least at the beginning.
Yeah, anyway, the use case for which I recommend Sideshift is when people want to pay you in stablecoins and you don't want that. And you just go to Sideshift, you paste your BTC address, and then you're going to have this window where it says send your USDT or USDC or whatever to this address. You give that to the person wanting to send you stablecoins, and then what's going to happen is that you get BTC directly to your wallet, and the fees are pretty low, the liquidity is good, so check out Sideshift. And also, I have to ask you where you read your Bitcoin news.
Okay. I guess most of it currently is Twitter. But also at the same time, I'm trying to learn more about Bitcoin from the basis of it, so, because like, I think both are important. Like if you don't know what the base of Bitcoin is and why it was built and how it was built, then you don't understand what's building. But at the same time, like if you're just staying with this base and with kind of older technologies and approaches, like you're not following the new approaches, and we kind of build our own application product on top of this kind of new approach, which is a ZK rollup on Bitcoin. So I'm trying to follow both of those kind of type of sources.
Yeah, but according to the rules of being sponsored, I have to mention Bitcoin.com news. There used to be this website that was promoting Bitcoin Cash as Bitcoin, and that was like 8 years ago. And they had a rebrand. Now they understand the difference between BTC and BCH. And they have pretty good news reporting. I'm the one who reached out to them and said, I see that you've changed and most people are not even aware. And they also have news coverage about, for example, gold or markets outside of the US. Because one problem that I have sometimes with Bitcoin Magazine or Coindesk is that they focus so much on institutions and I guess government officials now from the US. And it's like the rest of the world doesn't really exist unless it's super bullish and they have to announce, well, this, I think it's Myanmar. I don't want to say something stupid, but I heard that they have a pro Bitcoin candidate, and that was sort of a big piece of news. But outside of that, there's still a lot of news that doesn't get reported, and sometimes I find it on news.bitcoin.com. So I recommend that you check that out if you ever have time. And now I gotta ask you how you see the future of Bitcoin, because you're building something which is on top of a layer 2 for Bitcoin. It's basically, so in the fiat system you have banks, and on top of banks you have stuff like PayPal, you have stuff like Patreon for people who send money, you have Venmo, you have whatever the other ones are, Cash App.
Yeah, multiple
And
things.
you're building a layer, which is, I'm not sure if Tanari is a layer 3 per se.
Yeah, for now it's not. It's now just an app. But like you can think in different ways of like what you can do with it.
Yeah, so how do you see the future of this? You think there will be multiple layer 2s that will be interoperable and maybe do atomic swaps using the Lightning Network? Or do you think there will be only one dominant layer 2 and it's going to be one ZK rollup or one sidechain, and that one's going to amass all the activity and users?
Yeah, I think the answer depends on the time horizon. For example, like something in next, maybe a few years, I think there will be just a few ZK rollups. I don't see being that many ZK rollups used as they're now sidechains. What I definitely see is Lightning playing a huge role in it because of this interoperability between them. But I also see like some people going to other solutions. That's kind of their choice. We'll see who will end up being dominant. I believe like for Bitcoin to stay true to its narrative, it needs to be what we discussed, here, which is like self-custodial. People choose their own rules. People know what they're getting into, and then like if we can do all of this on a ZK rollup, I think that's a really good point because like the security stays. People are not making trade-offs or a lot of trade-offs like with other systems, and they have all that they need. And in terms of like your point that there is a traditional system, there is banks and then stuff on top of that banks. Well, if you think about it, those other stuff on top of the banks, they're like software solutions. And we're building blockchain and Bitcoin as a native software solution. And like, who knows what we can also do on top of that that does not exist on traditional systems. So I'm really, I'm really looking forward to exploring those possibilities, of course, in a line of like what Bitcoin offers.
It's definitely exciting, and it's good to see lots of projects that are competing at this phase. A lot of people shit on ordinals and they say, oh, it was a bug, it was a security glitch, it's something that needs filters to be stopped. But at the same time, it gave people ideas. They realized, wait, so if you can embed data into Bitcoin blocks, it doesn't have to be JPEGs, it can be ZK proofs. And you can use these ZK proofs to verify data from layer 2s.
Yeah, I think that's how Citrea team actually got to their, Bitcoin solution part. Ordinal started and like people saw multiple things. But also like what I kind of like is that I am following what kind of in my own kind of local communities, what those conservative people are talking about. So when the ordinals came, they were like, oh, this is stupid, this is a bug. But then over time, I think they kind of saw it that this is like, okay, this is permissionless. So people can actually do whatever they want, right? And now a lot of them are in this setup of, okay, I'm not sure what those scaling solutions will be, but like I'm open to people actually building. and maybe I will try it out in the future. And I think that's good enough, like for those conservative type of people. And then the rest of the community can actually definitely try for themselves and see what's out there.
Yeah. And I think what changed the perception of ordinals, as you said, is the fact that people also came up with other ways to put Bitcoin data, like stamps, which is, I think, the least efficient way. It's like a large multi-sig that has tiny pieces of data. It's super expensive. It just bloats the UTXO set. But it's possible. And it's possible. It was always possible. What's different, and the reason why it was created, is that there was a market for these NFTs at the time. Right now, I think the NFT market is very much down. I don't think anyone's still buying JPEGs on a blockchain. But it was exciting, so people built it. And also built BRC20 tokens, which, once again, are a very inefficient way of using the space. So people looked back at ordinals, which are the ones that started everything, and they said, this is not that bad. It's actually, if we're going to have this on Bitcoin, it's actually the most elegant way that we can build this.
But I want to ask, do you see this shift in your personal circles? Because I know that you're moving through a lot of different circles in terms of Bitcoiners. So do you see this shift that people actually accepted what was happening and now they're more open-minded, at least some of them?
Well, I think, so when you spend so much time in Bitcoin, you understand that there's a difference between what people tweet and what people say after a couple of beers at a conference.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are fine with this, including engineers and researchers. I remember even Andrew Polstra was very vocal. He's the chief scientist at Blockstream. And he sent an email and said, there's no way for us to stop this. And it's not even the worst way it can be done. It's pretty elegant, actually. So we're not going to fight it. It's going to happen, and there's nothing we can do about it. Let's embrace it, because there's a block size limit at the end of the day. And you can't put files as large as you want. But yesterday, they launched version, I think it was 29 of Bitcoin Core. And it made the rounds. It appeared in lots of news. And I saw Luke Dash Jr., who is running the ocean mining business and is very much against ordinals, that he tweeted and said, well, they made all of these optimizations and they updated the software, but they still haven't fixed what's important, to add filters to keep out the ordinal inscriptions.
Yeah.
So I guess you still have these tiny cults and people who are on a personal crusade thinking that they're going to save Bitcoin from some sort of attack that they're imagining. And there were entire businesses that were built out of this story. So I guess everyone follows their incentives, but it's cool to see that something that started out as just fun, people putting JPEGs on the blockchain, became something more significant, and that actually helps Bitcoin scale.
Yes. And I also think it's really, interesting to think about how early the development of Bitcoin is, because if you zoom out a couple of years back or maybe decades, we're all in our daily lives and feel like it feels eternity, from the ordinals, it was almost 2 years ago, and what happened between then and now. But also at the same time, if you zoom out and see Bitcoin happened, and then block size wars, and then Lightning, and a couple of salt forks, and then now we have a different scaling solutions. So if you look from that perspective, who knows what's the next step, and that's why we're decided to build and actually be part of this kind of next step, and that's why we're excited to be here.
Yeah. Is there anything about Tanari that you want to mention and I haven't asked you about?
Yeah, let's see. I would just like to, summarize that Tanari will be built with the ease of usage in mind and security, which means that you will do whatever you can on financial systems traditionally, but now on Bitcoin. And our goal is to enable that for everyone. So, people will have their own choices, and people will do different stuff, but that's okay. And I think that's how it should be. And we're happy to kind of provide a service for all the other people who are out of it right now. and they will be in it with Tanari for sure. So yeah.
I guess the haters will look back at your Ethereum code and say, this failed and Tanari will fail too. Would you say that your Ethereum project is a failure, or is it still being maintained and built?
Yeah, I mean, it's still out there, but like haters can look at whatever they want. I think what's important is to actually focus on facts and what we're doing now for this kind of Bitcoin, community. So we'll try to be as transparent as possible, as true as possible to the principles that we have. So people can comment on it however they want.
That's a fair way of presenting it. So you said you're going to launch alongside Citrea whenever that's ready.
We're hoping to do something, along those dates, right?
And I guess Tanari is going to be the first application that you can use on Citrea. I'm not aware of any others. Are there?
I mean, Citrea is integrating different applications, that are kind of EVM compatible. So you can definitely test it out currently, but like we will try to be one of the first Bitcoin native applications in Citrea.
So
I'm not sure if it will
you're
be the
saying
only
that
one.
there will be other types of applications which are not Bitcoin native?
Yeah, when I say Bitcoin native, I mean like you have them on the other systems and they're now like kind of doing the same thing on Citrea. But like Tanari is not out there in any other ecosystem. So we are launching with Citrea first. And I think there will be a couple of other people doing that.
What does Tanari mean, or why did you choose this name?
Yeah, the name is not something that that has a kind of a special meaning. We kind of joke that we'll be the ones who will give it the meaning. So yeah, we'll see how will that go in the next couple of years.
It sounds a bit like Atari, and it reminds me of Tari, which is basically, I think, some sidechain for Monero that's doing tokens.
Yeah, or maybe like Atari Games, right?
Yeah, Atari, Tanari.
Yeah.
Sounds very similar.
Yeah. I mean, we'll try to, as I said, like make a name out of itself. So we'll see.
Okay. So I'm not sure if I have any more questions for you. But I have 2 more sponsors to plug. It's been only 1 hour. I usually do much longer interviews. So there's hodling.ch, a service from Switzerland that's going to help you with your self-custody. If you hold a lot of Bitcoin and you don't know how to secure it, or you're part of a company that's going to add a lot of Bitcoin to its balance sheet, then you should think about your security. And if you need a multi-sig, if you need hardware wallets, who's going to hold them, how many backups are going to be held inside of your office or home, how many you should keep outside, how you should use other forms of cold storage. There are lots of questions, and these guys can help you tailor your setup according to your threat model. So check them out. If you lost 2 or 3 words from your seed phrase, or you scrambled the words and you can't recover your funds, they also have a service for coin recovery. But of course, there's a fee for that, which I think is much better than losing your coins forever, but it's up to you to decide. So check out hodling.ch. And last but not least, there's No Ones, which is a peer-to-peer marketplace for gift cards, for all sorts of digital codes, and also a peer-to-peer marketplace for exchanging various types of cryptocurrencies. It's aimed at empowering the global south. So the mission of the CEO, Ray Youssef, is to get people from Nigeria, people from the Middle East, to be part of the financial system of which they are exempt or which does not welcome them. And they also have a debit card for spending your coins if you're into that. So check out noones.com if you would like to be part of this economy. Filip, I guess I'll be hearing a lot more about you in the coming years. Am I gonna see you at any conferences this year?
Sure. I'll be at Pizza Day conference next. So if you're there.
So Pizza Day Prague, which is next month?
Yeah, in the May.
And anything else?
Probably BTC Prague after that, and then like we'll see for the rest of the year. I'm not sure about Bitcoin 2025. So yeah, not fully decided yet. We'll see how Tanari goes, but hopefully in some of those major ones for sure.
Sounds good. So you're gonna be in Prague twice, and maybe Las Vegas.
Yeah, hoping so.
Okay, Philip, thank you very much for your time. Thank you, everyone, for listening and liking and subscribing and commenting and blah, blah. And I'll see you in the next one.
Thank you a lot. Talk to you next time.